Good morning, everyone.
Hi.
I'm Gretchen, and I'm here to talk to you about how we took a need and turned it into a service. Apple has this great program called the Apple Deployment Programs, and when it was launched, people at Penn State asked, hey, we want to use that program. And so we at CLC, or Classroom and Labs Computing, had to kind of take that need and actually make it into a service, so we work as a liaison between the IT units and Apple. So today, I'm going to give you kind of a brief overview of what Penn State is and who we are, and a little bit about the program. I'm not going to go really in-depth into the program itself. There's several other sessions that are doing that. I'm just going to look at how we took that, try to make that service for people, and kind of give people an idea of what it takes to launch a service. Talk about how we set service planning. When we were in our planning for this service, we had to take an abrupt detour into the world of risk management and try to vet our program to them and make sure we're protecting Penn State's interests. We then had to kind of manage people's expectations, not only us, our expectations for our customers, but also what our customers expect us to do. Then marketing, creating awareness, making people aware that this program exists, and then just to show you where we are today. A little bit about Penn State. Penn State has 24 campuses. This one here is University Park. It's the main campus, and then we have 22 Commonwealth campuses scattered amongst the states, and they range from a few hundred students to a few thousand students. We also have Hershey Medical Center as well. It's kind of under the Penn State umbrella. There's 70,000 students at Penn State, 40,000 of them here at University Park, and there's 14,000 staff and faculty. So with that big kind of audience there, you know, our IT, we're kind of siloed. We have central IT, which is, we're located here at University Park, and that's called Information Technology Services, and that's where I live. A lot of the colleges or IT units or units on campus have their own IT staff. It can be as small as a couple people, you know, helping their units' computers, desktop computers, to full-blown colleges. They're managing, you know, the professors, the office staff, and their students' IT needs. And then all the Commonwealth as well has their own IT units. So my picture is there are silos, but we're trying to start working together. That's a big drive lately, is trying to, you know, leverage each other and work together. So we're trying to break down some of those silos and put some connections in between them. So the Apple Deployment Programs, Apple launched this service in the spring of 2014. Basically, I like to describe it as a big umbrella. And underneath it is the Volume Purchase Program, which was available before 2014, but it kind of just fell underneath this umbrella. And that's purchasing apps at a volume purchase price. And there's the Device Enrollment Program, which allows people to configure a device and enroll it into their MDM service without actually touching the device. It's a great program for people to just, you know, they buy iPads for their faculty, they can get email and everything configured on the device without even having to open it, and they can just hand it to the staff member or the faculty member. And then there's the Apple ID for Students program. That's for people under the age of 13. We don't have very many 13-year-olds here, so we don't use that program here at Penn State. So we both mostly focus on the Volume Purchase Program and the Device Enrollment Program. This program is available to education, K through 12 and higher education, as well as enterprise and businesses as well. The things you need to be involved or be in these programs is you need an Apple customer number. It's usually what you use when you purchase anything from Apple, and it associates those devices with your account, and that helps out with the Device Enrollment Program. You need a DUNS number, which is a unique identifier that's for each location your business is in. Penn State has one for all our 24 campuses, so we all sit under that same umbrella. And that's where it kind of makes it a little interesting. And then the contact person is someone who can actually sign the contract. It can't be me, and it can't be my manager. It's actually someone higher up, and that's why we ended up getting risk management involved, because those people have to read the contract and make sure we're protecting our interests. There's a web link. I know it's kind of hard to see, but if you also just Google, Apple deployment programs, you can find the information about the programs and how to use it. So ADP, which is Apple Deployment Programs, just kind of describe some terms in case I use them and it confuses you. There's the program agent, which is the person who manages the program itself. There's usually just one person that's designated, and they actually add managers into the program. The managers actually could use the program, add devices in to DEP, manage VPP, that sort of thing. Then there's the MDM service, which is a mobile device management, either a server, like you have here physically, or it could be a third-party service like Bushel or Makati. Another term, and I don't know if I really say it much here, there's a server public key and a token, and that's used if someone has an MDM server, they have to provide the program manager that key so that you can put it into the Apple deployment programs, and then we give them a token. And what that does, it creates a virtual server and allows communication between Apple and our MDM device or their MDM device. And so that's used for communication. So, talked a little bit about those programs and who we are. So when this program launched, almost immediately we had a few people email us, because CLC is kind of the central unit of Mac people and iOS people. So they would come to us, hey, there's this really cool thing, we want to use it, can we use it today? No, you shouldn't try to just go with it, because my experience, it never goes well. You need a lot of planning. So that's when we started going into service planning. And this whole journey took, the service was launched in spring of 2014. We didn't actually have it available here at Penn State until October. So it was a whole long, constant journey to get there. A lot of it was in our big detour through risk management. So I'm going to talk about how it works, or how we figured out how it works, our slight detour, how we created a workflow on how to support people, setting expectations, like I said, between not only us, but the customers and those people around us. And then how we figure out how to support our users and identify the areas that we need support. So first we had to figure out this service. You see all the Apple's great documentation, all the buzzwords, how great it is, but we needed to figure out how it works and how people use this service. So we looked at the Apple Docs. We went not only in the support documentation, but if you have a developer account, you can actually go look in the developer information. And there's sometimes a little more extra things in there that's helpful to know. So, documentation. We also looked at, MDM vendors had some great documentation as well. Jamf had some great, I'm a kind of a visual person, so they had some great illustrations on how it all worked, and it helped us, figure out a good workflow, which I'll get to in a minute, of what to expect, what to see. A lot of people, are great at blogging. They put up, some information about it. They have, they don't have to go through the loopholes that we have to. So we kind of worked off the community and gleaned off information and tried to figure out this system. And then we just leveraged our, Apple SE, our system engineer, Brett. He came in, he talked to us about it. He told us where probably some places that might have trouble. He's already gone out to other universities, schools, and says, hey, this is a problem that people are having. And so that kind of really helped us develop the service and figuring out how we support our customers and make sure we have everything together. So developing a workflow, we're trying to just figure out how the service works and where we need to, our customer interactions are, where we have to interact with Apple. So we have to identify all our stakeholders. And then we have to identify, what who does what, the tasks they have to do. Then we have to kind of indicate, I'll show you in a second, a swimline diagram, but indicate the flow, how does all of this work together? And then we also was giving us an idea of where we need to support. So this here is our kind of our workflow diagram that we developed. And we kind of identify, PSU IT staff, these are colleges or departments that are around campus. CLC is us, and these are what we would have to do. We had Apple, which is the things that they have to do. And then we also put the new device, any interactions that the new device might be having to do. So these were really helpful going through and figuring out how it works. So, a person, an IT unit purchases a new device, and so this is all for the Device Enrollment Program. So they purchase a new device. Well, they need to make sure that they purchase it with a university Apple customer number so that it works in depth. That's where we had to realize that we had an education point there. We had to make sure departments are purchasing their devices through their purchasing department or we have a campus portal as well. They can't go to eBuy, or they can't go to Best Buy. They can't go buy it at Amazon if they want to use this program. So we need to make sure that IT staff are aware and that they make sure who they're supporting is aware as well. Then, Apple processes the order. They then associate the serial numbers with the device or with the customer ID number so that it's in depth and that it would pull up so we can create those connections. Then the IT unit would have to then communicate with us. Hey, because we have no idea that they purchased a device. So we have to have a point where the IT unit needs to communicate to us. So we need something there to make that service request. So there's another point we need to figure out how do we do that. Then we would link the orders together with their MDM server. We let them know that we did that. So we had to make sure we have a good notification path. And then the IT unit gets the device and they unbox it and it communicates with Apple through their activation process and the device works. So this really helped us, like I said, look at how it works and where are some places that we might need to, give support. So we identified the areas of support. There's customer education. Like I said, we would have to educate customers on where to purchase these devices. Make sure they understand, hey, you can't buy them on Amazon. You have to buy them at, through our eCampus store. No, the device your professor bought in Japan will not work in this program. They need to, so those are places that we need to make sure we had documentation and we communicated that. We also made a service request form that has not only, what do you need, but also what we need from them. So we need to know the order number. We need to know who you are, and we need to know where you want things connected. And then it also gave us some thought, and we had a long discussion about, how far do we support our customer? Are we just helping them, enroll their devices into the program? Are we going to be troubleshooting their MDM? Am I going to have to know all this? So we had to sit there and decide how far do we want to go? And we kind of came up to the decision of, we'll help them get their MDM into depth. We'll help them, get their devices into the Device Enrollment Program. But we're not going to be troubleshooting. We'll help them troubleshoot and work with their vendor on troubleshooting depth itself, but we're not going to figure out how to do a profile. We're not going to do that. We're happy to help, but we wanted to set our limits. So we went through there and we decided we need to test the workflow. And we went into the program. We were about ready to try it out, and there's a EULA. There's a end user license agreement. Penn State, we cannot, as I cannot, agree to those unless I am given permission by risk management. So that's where we kind of took a detour into risk management. And really that's the majority of the time spent trying to develop this service was just going through risk management. So risk management on their website says they're here to protect the revenue and assets and facilitate good business judgments, permitting the efficient use of resources to accomplish university goals, and which really means they're trying to cover our butts. So they need to review the end user agreement, and they need a justification why we even want to do this. Why do we want to have this service? So the first step was to write this justification. These are basically the sections that I actually had in our justification. We had to give an overview of what the program is, what it does. We had to keep, who our audiences in mind. It's risk management, and they're very smart, but they don't necessarily know what an MDM is. They don't necessarily know what iOS is. So we needed to make sure we describe, if we used, abbreviations, what those mean, and just in really good terms so they know what that is. Then we define, like I said, define the terms. Then we had to look at the risk and benefit of not joining and the risks and benefits of joining, and then rate those risks. So some examples of risks for not joining DEP. Well, we can just not join, and people who have to configure 100 devices that day, punch, 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 and keep going. And I'm not perfect. I had to do 3 devices for the front desk manually, and that wasn't 100% perfect. So that's a big risk for not joining. A benefit of not joining is, the whole, the faculty doesn't have to be concerned about someone touching his device or managing it, So that's a good benefit of not joining. But we also had to kind of look at how we would admit it, why that is kind of probably not a really good benefit. Some risks for joining was, that all Apple devices, all that information is available to the program manager. That's a big concern. If you don't, that could be a big concern because you don't want necessarily just anyone to know every device that was purchased at Penn State. So we had to think of ways to mitigate those risks. And so we actually, the only people that are allowed to associate a device with an MDM server is they have to go through us and make that request. So that somebody in one department can't just take somebody else's devices and throw them in their MDM. We just kind of have to work through that. So benefits of joining, like I said, it's just, being able to enroll the devices, being able to manage them right away. Those were really great benefits, and we thought, why not? We should join. But we had to make sure we sold these reasons and risks and benefits to risk management so they let us have this service available. And they also had to read the EULA, the end user license agreement. And it's a full of legalese, and that's what they're really good at doing. So they went through and they reviewed the EULA, and they came back to us for some clarifications. If you ever read the EULA, there's some certain parts in there where they wanted to make sure we addressed either, no, we're not going to do it, or, how are we going to handle certain things? And one of the things in the EULA was, do you want this EULA agreed to centrally, or do you want individuals to do it, each unit to do it? Well, ideally, I'm sure risk management doesn't want a whole bunch of colleges coming to them and approving this document, the same one over and over again, or we do it centrally. That was ideal, but then how do we do that? How do we pass that on? And so we worked with risk management on how to pass on we'll sign off on here, but we need to get the IT units to agree to it to us. So later on when we manage, when we started developing an SLA to manage that, there's a liability of MDM providers that's in that EULA. Basically it says, if Apple's not liable if the MDM service bricks the device. And that's understandable, but we needed to make sure, how do we mitigate that liability? And so risk management said, well, any MDM service that uses this, MDM server or service that uses this needs to be vetted by risk management. Okay, that's fine. So we'll put that responsibility on the unit saying, hey, your MDM needs to be vetted by risk management. There's a liability clause by Apple as well. You know, if they break a device, they're only liable for $50. Well, since we agreed to it, then the IT unit can come to us and say, hey, where's my $600 for my device? So we had to write in our SLA that we had to pass on that liability down to the actual unit. So a lot of these concerns, we worked with risk management, and we kind of all agreed that we needed to add this to an agreement that we would have with the customer or with the IT unit to make sure that all these concerns are addressed. And that just kind of gets into developing a service level agreement. These are kind of new for Penn State, but usually a lot of people have them. It's, you know, a service level agreement comes in handy when you're trying to manage anybody's expectations, both the IT unit or the customer, as well as you. If you don't have stuff in writing, people are going to shoot for the moon, and you have nothing to back you up. So at least the nice thing of having this all written down is you could say, no, 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 it's not written here. I don't have to respond to you in 30 seconds. It's actually 4 days. So that really makes sure that we're both on the same page on that information. So this is what's actually in our service level agreement. We state the purpose of this agreement so that both people understand what this agreement is, what it entails, what the service is, what's the part. So we define we define terms in there as well. What is VPP? What is WSDEP? What is an MDM service? That things. We identify the stakeholders, the parties that are involved in this document. We define who the IT unit is this, and this. CLC is this, and this. And the responsibility. So the IT unit needs to provide an order number in order for us to help them get into depth. CLC needs to provide the IT owner a server token, just so that that's all clear. If it's not written down, then no one really knows. And then there's communication. We actually stipulate, this is our contact information. This is our email address. This is where you make help requests, where we make general announcements. If you don't, how do you say, hey, the service is down for, X, Y, Z? It's really good to just have that all outlined, and then you can always just refer back to that document, or the customer can refer back to that document. We talk about how to make service requests. We actually include our link to our help request page. And then we addressed all of risk management's liability concerns. The MDM servers need to be approved by risk management, and that we're passing on anything that's in the EULA down to the IT unit. We attach that as well to them, to the agreement. Service continuity, with this service here, it's all pretty much on Apple's plate, but we actually make that clear. We have no control. We can't go reboot the server for you. It's Apple. So we make sure that people understand that. And then the time frame for the agreement. When does this agreement expire? Does it get renewed every year automatically? Do we need to, meet every year and talk about it? And also how to get out of it. Not only for the IT unit, how do they cancel it, the relationship, but how do we cancel a relationship? If Apple does, if we suddenly decide we want to get out of the device management program, we want to hand it off to somebody else, we actually say, I think we have to give them like 6 months to actually get their devices or anything we need to do so that we can cancel the agreement. And then signatures. Who signs this document? We decided to have the IT director because we wanted to make sure he or she is aware that they're going into this program. And we also have the financial officer, because there is some monetary liability in there. We want to make sure that the guy who controls the dollars knows that, hey, if the device gets bricked, Apple's only going to give you $50 for it. So we wanted to make sure everyone's aware and the right people are aware of this agreement. So like I said, risk management took about 6 months to get through. So or probably about 4. It was a very long, long dialogue to get through all that and to create the create that SLA and make sure they were fine, or, risk management and purchasing and financial services. And I think we talked to a lot of higher ups to make sure that we're pretty cool with it. And now we're ready to launch it. But, you have the service, and how do people get to know that it exists? Or someone might, at least with DEP or with the deployment programs, only one person within the whole university can take or be the administrator to that. But any other service, you don't want to have 4 different, some service ran by 4 different people. It's, so we want to make sure, and reinvent the wheel, so we want to make sure people are aware of it. And we kind of took 3 ways of doing that. We made a website. I gave a few presentations to a lot of different community members in IT and in the Mac community at Penn State. And then we just networked with people, different groups, and had them either promote our service or made them aware of the service. So our website, we had we made a mobile device kind of website. It was kind of general information about mobile device management, and within that we made the the Apple programs. There we had some how-tos. We had all our Here we had a lot of our service information. We had the electronic copies of the agreements, so we don't have to necessarily have to have that dialogue. They can just go to the website, download the documentation or the agreements, and then go. And when they're ready, they have directions on how to submit that. They have our help documentation as well as our links. And we really wanted to make this website kind of have them help themselves as much as they can, and be able to find all the resources and documentation of not only, our service, but Apple's documentation. There's links to that. Trying to develop, links to other resources. Then I did a lot of presentations. We actually announced we have a Penn State MacAdmins community meeting kind of every 2-3 months. It's when a lot of the Mac administrators at Penn State get together from all the different Commonwealth campuses and here at University Park. And we just talk about either, administrating Macs, iOS devices, what people are doing with them. And so that was a great opportunity to launch this service. And so I went there and I kind of gave them a description of each of the parts of it, how to use it, the great benefits of using it, and released, went through the SLA with them, and just made the service available and let people know that it exists. A few months later, I actually did a demo of it just so they could see, because some people you sit here and put words up on the screen. People don't understand what I'm talking about, and that's fine. But this was an actual opportunity to actually see it. So I had a device where, this is one that isn't in depth, and here's all the buttons I had to push, and here's one I had it in depth, and I just turned it on and a couple clicks and it was configured, and people were like, whoa, that's awesome. I want to do that. So that kind of just created some awareness, some excitement about being in the program. And then last month, me and College of Ed, Harrisburg, Josh here at College of Ed, Harrisburg, and I went to, there's a kind of a Tech Pros conference. It's IT staff at Penn State. We all go to one campus. We went to York this year and just talk about different, technologies we're using. And that was a great opportunity for me to do, or for us to do a presentation about our service. And, I just talked about the nuts and bolts of the service itself, but then I had these 2 great people that were talking about how they use the service and what great benefits they're getting from using it. And I think that really creates some buy-in, because I can sit here and talk about it, but when you have actual customers kind of give you, hey, I'm using it and it's awesome, that's really helpful not only for me, but for other people to kind of relate and maybe even have more in-depth questions that I may not be able to answer, and they would be great resources to use. So kind of give you an idea, like I said, my presentations, I just kind of covered, what it is, why is it a benefit for people to use, how do you get into it? I had the website, you need to write or have your IT director sign an SLA. I had people demonstrated it, created excitement, And then I, let them know what the next steps. What do you need to do to enroll? Do I need to email me? Do I need you to just go to read the website, right? Get people to sign an SLA and submit it to me. So those are great things to have in your kind of presentation to make people aware of your service. And then the last thing I did was, or one of the last things I did for creating interest in the service is just kind of networking. Again, I had our SC, Brett, our system engineer, go around. He knew that we were taking over DEP for all of Penn State. So when he went to a unit and they were thinking, well, we have all these devices and we're trying to manage them, he goes, oh, you need to get in touch with CLC, and they'll help you out in getting you into DEP. And so that really helped leverage some customers to come and kind of bring them to us. MDM vendors, I was on a phone call actually a few months ago, and I actually told him, we are the person we're the program agent for this. And he's like, oh, that's good to know, because when someone else is on campus is interested in the product, I know to direct them to you guys. And so that really helps us help them as well. Word of mouth, creating interest, making sure people know that we're here, putting on social networking. Penn State uses Yammer, so we put out like how to use it, or hey, this is a great new feature coming out, or WWDC had a great session last month about device management, what's new in device management, and so I put that out there. Hey, here's what's coming. This is really great. And then customer endorsements are really helpful as well. Like I said, I had Josh and I had James come out and just say, using the service has really made it really easy, and this is how you do it. And so that really helped out a lot, getting the service kicked off. So where we're at today, I have 7 units right now using the service in some way or shape or form. College of Education, Penn State Harrisburg, their small IT unit is using it. Shenango is just using it, I believe, for VPP. Health and Human Behavior, Penn State Athletics. That's a very exciting one because they give out iPads to all their athletes. I think there's like 2,000 of them. And so thinking about trying to, I think last year they used Configurator, and just think that to use DEP would be just so much easier. So they're actually, hopefully this round, they're gonna use DEP, and then they less touching and more just enjoy your device. Development and alumni relations, and of course us here at Classroom and Labs. So we launched in 2014, about 9 months ago, and I looked a few days ago, and I think we had about 300 or 400 devices in DEP of the 10,000 that are eligible. So I'm not expecting we get all 10,000 under it, but it's progress. And so next year we'll have another metric, and hopefully that'll continue to go up. So that's pretty much it. That's kind of pretty much the path we took to take this idea or this request and actually make it into a service. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Although I do ask that you use the mic to do it because they're recording it and people like to hear the question. So that's pretty much all I have, though. Yep.
Good morning. So when people purchase the Macs, how are you telling it to automatically enroll in DEP? Because some departments are using it and some departments aren't.
Right. So when the department orders some devices, then they would either give me send a service request with either the serial numbers or the order number, and then what I would do. So before that, the IT unit, we would have, they would give me their server public key, and then I would give them this token. Yep. That relationship is done in DEP. And then, like I said, they submit their serial numbers or order numbers, and then I put them in the DEP, and I say, hey, this is associated with, XYZ department, and that makes that tie. So then when the device activates, it automatically goes in the MDM. Okay,
so, and you're the only one who's doing that, right? Or, okay. Yeah, and because the concern we have, because we're doing something similar, is we tell people, sorry, you have to give us your serial numbers, and then we'll do all the work for you.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Hi, Chris.
Hello. So my question is a question of clarification. It is, are you managing a single MDM for the entire Penn State system and facilitating plugging different university units into it, or are you facilitating each of these university IT units setting up their own MDM and helping with the Apple DEP enrollment into those?
Yeah, we're facilitating. So right now they can have their own MDM, and we just facilitate when we plug them in. So we just make sure we indicate, like, this is the College of Ed's Jamf server, and this is...
Okay, so it's more of a facilitation.
Yeah, we don't facilitate. We are looking into having maybe a central MDM. We're going to evaluate those needs and see if there's a demand for one or not. But right now, yeah, it's their own. Either they have their own or...
Do you happen to know if you have any units that are using an MDM and DEP for Macs as opposed to iOS devices?
Harrisburg has things in DEP, but I don't think he's actually, or Macs in DEP. I think he just pulled the inventory and his inventory and had us associate those. But I don't think he's actually managing it, because when I talked to him last, he was mostly talking about his iOS devices.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Hi. So I was just kind of wondering, like you said, the marketing and the Apple's documentation looks really, really slick, and we've had Apple come out a few times and talk to us on different occasions about this. But have you encountered any problems? In particular, it sounds like, is everyone at Penn State using thin imaging then? As a consequence of using DEP, or?
No, I mean, it's, like I said, we don't have very many Macs. Do you guys thin image, or do you guys
use Deploy Studio?
Use Deploy Studio,
I'm still not
but you're not using it for DEP?
DEP yet, because there's still a lot of things it lacks on the OS 10 side. I know they're adding that you can do the local account for your local admin account, but they haven't done a whole lot yet. So.
All right, thanks. Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering is that there's this whole other thing with OS 10 kind of being a different animal with these programs. Yeah,
what Josh said was, he's not using it for Macs, but yeah, plus you can kind of circumvent it with thin imaging and stuff. So that's a big problem with concern.
Thank you.
Yep.
Did you want to show them the token, what it looks like? I have my MDM if you want to look it up and show them.
I don't know, sure. Although it might cause problems.
Will it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So maybe you can't recommend, but if you guys have a lot of different MDMs, is there one that is taking the lead if we're looking into different options? Right now, we just use like the free Meraki one, which seems to function for some iOS stuff, but is there...
So Jamf is a big person. So of the 7 units that I know, we have 2 in Jamf, we have 2 in Moz 360, and we have 2 using OS X Server, which is painful,
To say the least.
to say the least. So it really gets down to what the MDM has and what your needs are, because some people think Jamf is great and it's doing everything they want. Other people think Moz 360 meets their needs, but then you have to look at their environments and what they're managing. I've heard, I haven't played with them too much, but like Moz 360 is great for one-to-one, or you're managing your professors and your staff, but for your lab settings, not so much. Jamf, you can do all of it in some ways, but there might be some shortcomings there. So I hate to recommend one. I'm a Jamf person. I've used Jamf for a long time, but I'm investigating Moz 360 because that's where Penn State has a big, we're in with IBM and Big Fix, and Moz 360 is a partner of that, so we have to investigate them, and we probably could get cheaper, maybe. I don't know. So I hate to be wishy-washy. EnterpriseIOS.com .org has a great website that kind of takes all the MDMs and tells you if they do DEP, if they do BVP, and all the different things that are available. It's also a great indicator of how often they update. That's a great reason why you would go for one MDM versus another. When El Capitan comes out, is that MDM service or provider going to be ready day 1, or are they ready day 220? So, that's a big, huge driving factor. Jamf is usually quick. A few others are really quick. Others are just like, oh, there's a new OS coming out? Great, I'll check that out. So it's up to that. Any other questions? Cool. I'm done like 35 minutes early.